just now.
Okay, and 5:30. We have an agenda today. We'll start with public comments, and it doesn't look like we have any. We'll move to commissioner comments. We won't be able to approve the minutes if we don't have a quorum, so we'll pass that to the next month in November. Our communication with the city manager will be tabled for another day because we don't have a representative from the city manager's office. But we have anybody here on the outreach committee?
Not yet.
Marty shows up, we'll ask to report out on the subcommittee that is decided. Then we'll review the guardian mentality, chief's report, and we'll close.
Well, so for commissioner comments, I thought you and Bill did a wonderful job at the city council meeting.
Thank you.
Well presented, succinct, very nice, very good.
Thank you, Marty, for being here.
I thought it reflected what we did that day, everything that we talked about in our in-service or whatever, I don't know what the term was that Saturday, but it was very good. Very clear.
Thank you.
Well, I Lindsay said it. I saw that in here last month, but this is piece for planning sessions on the board, so did make the civilian review board meeting the other night. There as well. We reviewed a taser case, and obviously there was a lot of kind of associated issues with that case, and I want to share a few of these. And they're just comments from different board members. So we speak in terms of Officer A, Officer B, Sergeant A, B, and so on. No names or anything, so I'll kind of go with that. So we had Officer B was on the scene concerning the suspect of that in particular. Officer B was on the scene for about 10 minutes. And then Officer A arrived, and within about 40 seconds of Officer A, not yet, yeah. Within about 40 seconds of Officer A arriving, the suspect went from standing there to being caged. So that's the start of it. So he was, the suspect was told to sit down, declined, and then the officer was going to pepper spray you, or I think he said pepper spray, but one of the, not mace, I think pepper spray. And the suspect said, well, if you spray me, I'll kick your butt, basically. And so he went to the taser and shot it, beat the thing. So some of the issues that came out, there hadn't been a crime committed at that point. We talked about disobeying an order to sit down, but there's no underlying crime status at the time. So the majority of the board disagreed with the adjudication that the tasing was within policy. Here's where we get to some of the interesting things. The policy at issue was 809411, and it says a person who, by their words or conduct, an officer, so we always measure from an officer's reasonable set of officers, not like what you were doing to the officer reasonably believes creates an immediate credible threat, of physical injury to the person, him or herself, the officer, or another person, and fails to comply with the police order to stop physically threatening the taser. So the board was like, well, even if you had one that failed to comply, the threatening behavior was not like ongoing, it was a constant, right? This is what the board's discussion was. And was it a credible threat? Was it reasonable to believe it was a credible threat? Did those things occur? And most boards didn't think that the reason to comply in that situation. So that was one. But the other part of that is within that policy, they pointed out that section 2, so 89412, has a lower standard. So like perhaps there's a little conflict between 1 and sub 1 and sub 2. get to section 2. Okay, so section 1 required an immediate critical threat. And section 2 have a policy here. Slightly different. So section 2 says a person by their words or conduct Officer Reedman believes creates a critical threat, a serious physical injury to the person, him or herself, and so on. So the other one, Reedman believes immediate versus credible threat. So you don't really need one if you got 2, because 2 is kind of a lower bar. So it might be worth some discussion about. You don't even need the first one if the second comes there. So they saw that tension between 1 and 2. The auditor thought the action did not meet the reasonable standard as identified in Graham versus Connor, but felt the policy didn't sufficiently articulate the standard well enough, so he ruled that they didn't work in that policy. So at some point, you may want to just review and if there's any confusion or ambiguity that we might want to set up. So other issues. Some of the board wondered why, if Officer B was there on the scene for 10 minutes and had presumably a little more information, and Officer A was there for 40 seconds and went to taser, why was Officer A the primary officer as opposed to Officer B? And so there was a discussion about, well, if that person beat their primary, but it might be a good discussion, like, well, but one had more information than the other. And along with that is, then you would hope that A would have a conversation with B to, like, you know, and then not every situation is going to allow it, right? I mean, it can be such that we don't have time for this. If it's happening now, we've got to get it done. But where it allows, like, well, it would probably be good to, what do you know? What do you know about the situation? And get a little bit more information. During the interview, he was asked about de-escalating, like what did you do to de-escalate? He said, well, she's been there for 10 minutes. So apparently de-escalation failed. So you feel like you didn't have any efforts in de-escalation. But he also I didn't think personally, that there was enough dialogue between A and B for him to make like that judgment, considering the guy really wasn't doing anything at that point. That was navigation, he was packing the bigger things. So that was a pretty interesting discussion. Let's see. And the last issue was there was a report, use of force report that was presented to us a few months ago, and there was at least a question about folks that were charged with interfering and resisting, and are those, do we track those? Are those kind of pile bomb charges? You know, where do those go? Somebody raised the issue. I think one board members raised the issue about. Now, is there a way to understand, like, when those get charged and when those get prosecuted, we track like the difference so we can know whether they're just possibly negotiated away. Because we see a lot of them. They're under other, I think, chief in the use of force report. So that's a big category, I get that. But the number of the board members see those charges enough that they have a question about whether or not, you know, how are those being used? Are they more of a, well, you're just not compliant on that, pile it on. So their interest would be in understand whether or not there's a way to track from the charge versus what gets prosecuted. I don't know what that would tell us, but it's an interesting question. My takeaway is the policy could be reviewed, as well as it'd be interesting to talk about the primary officer on the scene, and then communication, both de-escalating and getting informed at the scene if the situation permits for taking action. I think those were really valid and interesting discussion, worth exploring a little more. Communication seemed to be all around as the biggest thing. That's what I'd say. It was an interesting thing. Thank you.
Any comments? Again, Leader?
No, other than, as I attended a number of CRP meetings, discussion is always helpful for me. It's very informative. And it's nice to see the perspective of people who, together spend time and all the points that the CRP made last night.
I'll just give a little report. Monday night we had the City Commission work plan for the last 2 years and going forward the next 2 years. And the mayor and the council seemed very pleased with the work and thanked us all for the time that we spent reviewing policies and other input that we've been making and attending workshops and other things. They thought it was great. They did approve our 2018-2019 work plan, and some of the highlights from my notes. With a particular interest was the drone policy, the discussion around that, and how it also could impact other areas of the city, not just the police force. So there's some interest there. A survey, both internally, the police department, and externally to see what's happening inside and what's happening outside, what the community thinks. They thought that might be very beneficial once the new chief was selected, so we'll have that, or he or she, that person will have that data to be able to act on and have an understanding. We talked about military equipment and acquiring military equipment. There's some conversation there that we were going to handle that one correctly. I don't think there's anything with the commission on that.
Yeah, we publish occasionally when asked what we've acquired over the last 10 years. Very little.
And then really the communication piece with the city manager's office doing the study of the resources and the overall criminal justice system and what that the efficiencies that we might find, how our work plan aligns with some of the work there, and then how do we communicate with the city manager's office as well as the city council. So there was discussion about that, and it seemed to be general support to find the best method of communicating that and potentially working with the results of that study. And then Council Pryor brought up our prioritization of the work plan. Right now we don't have it listed by priority, it's just bullet. But they thought it would be more effective if we had a priority with it, and that way we can align resources that we're suggesting might be beneficial to the work that we're doing. And that's how we got into the discussion about the communication. That we are kind of holding back so that we can move things around as a study and move some more information. So overall, I think it was a very good dialogue back and forth. I think we were right there 30, 40 minutes and a lot of good discussion. And again, they're thankful for the work we've done and approved from my own. So thank you all. Approve our minutes, and we don't have someone from the state energy office, so we don't have an outreach. No one here is on the outreach subcommittee, right? Okay, so we're regarding mentality. Is it next steps?
Yeah. So I presume that what you'd all like is a little bit of a presentation on it, so that you can have a discussion. So. I think I just kind of missed out.
If I can just interject, this was a discussion point too during our work plan review, the Guardian versus Warrior mentality. I think that actually meant
Well,
perfect time.
I'll be as brief as I can, so discuss whatever you'd like. Essentially, one of the presumptions of the 21st Century Policing Report is that police had gravitated to a place where we were acting more as an occupying force in some of our communities rather than a presence that's there to protect and to help the people that we serve, regardless of their social class, their economic status, their housing status, their race, gender, any of those factors that are sometimes, that people sometimes fear police consider when deciding where to spend their time. The reality is that so the 21st century policing principles are intended to move police departments for a place where officers see themselves. So from their core, they see that their role is more of a guardian rather than a warrior in their communities. And the reality is that for the most part, probably 97% of our time, we can act as guardians, but there are those moments when we need to be able to perform like a warrior. So those are some truths. So in the packet for this week, Carter included Miller from 21st Century Policing Report on social legitimacy. It has a couple of components in there. So what I've done on this base page that you have in the packet I just handed out is to list the public trust components that the police department has that speak to that particular part of the plan. So our department values are integrity, compassion, and courage. This slideshow that I've attached is the presentation that I've given to every employee, and took about 4 months to go through it in service last year. And then I've reinforced those pieces related to compassion and some other things by reading aloud in service some of the commendations that come in that describe officers performing in exactly the way that that our values expect us to. Some of the most important areas have to do with under the category of passion in this presentation, and that's the sanctity of life, proportionality, which is to say that our introduction of police intervention should be proportional to the situation that we're in, which means we need to understand what we're getting into, and compassion implicates those types of things. We also have a procedural justice training team. Will is a member of that team, and it addresses some of the things that are in the other component of this particular authority. So our officers are taught procedural justice, and there's an expectation that the organization will move internally to a place where our decision-making includes the procedural justice approach. COURT, the Community Outreach and Response Team, is an example of the trust and legitimacy that we're trying to build by using alternatives to law enforcement to help people who are frequent utilizers of the criminal justice system. Community court and consent management. Every member of our sworn personnel attends crisis intervention training. They're basically certified in crisis intervention, and that has been a pretty critical part of being Eugene police officer in the last 10 years. And I think as a consequence of all these things together, we find that our officers are seen as compassionate individuals when they're dealing with people who are in mental health crisis. Right now, we're working through a policy on lone armed barricaded subjects that has the sanctity of life as a central motivating factor in policy and how we conduct ourselves, how that can play out in the field. And then University Fellowship Church has provided us with a fund. This was about 8 years ago. They gave us, I think, initially $1,000 so that our officers can help people on the street, and that's used often our officers and sergeants. And then the second section from this pillar is to acknowledge the role of policing in the past and how that's affected relationship between police and the community. Our procedural justice training addresses that, and the civil rights movement, and then we've had a few things that have happened locally. The Vortex riot, I think, is the first, chronologically, is the first things that happened here. There's a riot we had in the park, probably 20 years ago now. We had the anarchist movement, and then a riot on June 1st, 1997. And then establish a culture of transparency and accountability. The Police Commission helps with that. The independent police auditor, the CRV, the annual report plan from the auditor and the CRV. We have the Blue Team system where We have a pretty high rate of reporting on incidents that our officers are involved in, and that we have a pretty comprehensive way of capturing the work that we do on the street in our team for 21. So that's what I thought I'd give you to start the discussion.
Thank you. I'd like to maybe something a little different, so just raise your hand, but let's go around the room like we do with the investigation first, initial thoughts out, and then we'll start some questions and conversations and initial comments. Worry about what some of you. I'm gonna pass. Sorry.
In the CIT training, is part of that to deal with persons who are autistic, that kind of affect where you're not going to get the response you're looking for? And so that's good. There was a recent case with a young boy who wasn't responding the way, and the officer had drug training, and so he was interpreting it as the kid was high, as opposed to, so I just wondered if that distinction was clear,
Yes.
Excellent. That's the only thing that came to my mind right away with this. And of course, I missed all of those June 1st, 97 vortex.
Yeah.
You're pretty bad, so that's a surprise right there.
Well, I was a part of the presentations to all of our EPD officers for many times, and I was gratified at the reception that the training was pretty good, especially for me personally. I've had 6 to 10 officers just find me, like in the grocery store. Of course, I don't recognize them, but they stop me, tell me who they are, and then comment on the training. Partly just to say thanks as a civilian for doing this kind of thing, but also clearly they appreciated the content of the training. And so, okay, I expected more resistance from that, from police officers, for no good reason. You always expect resistance, right? Well, 37 years teaching university students, you expect resistance. So my efforts in that, and the team efforts in that training seem to be really to get a more or less gratifying result. So I was very happy about that. And I've done quite a lot of guidelines for these experiences, and I've just been really pleased when I see the officers handling some pretty difficult cases on the street, but they're way more restrained than we can provide with not being trained in this, and not being scared or reacting. And it's limited experience, it's true. I haven't had a full spectrum of police officers, but from what I've seen, they're really good. So, and that's kind of what I had to say about it.
I was here for some of these things. I remember the hammer was, I happened to be riding my car with an open face helmet and a smart box, but I got the effects of some pepper spray, and I had to pull over. It burned my eyes and watering. So right after this guardian versus warrior mentality. I'll just disclose, I might have a bit of a surprise given all the years I've been on the civilian review board and the number of youth sports cases that I've reviewed. And, you get interviews and listen to audio recordings and ICBs and so on, And I know it's a small sample of what happens every day, so I want to be fair about that, right? But I would put like the warrior with his command and control, where I give you an order and you need to comply, versus the guardian where I might take an extra minute and have a conversation.
And I know we put like de-escalation, like, but maybe some policy down there. And I still see like, I still see instances where I think that the matter is escalated. Still more of the command and control versus take a second, because there's lots of situations that I see would allow for that extra second, you know, or minute or whatever. It's like, and it may be like we're stressed, we don't have enough resources. I think that was, you know, the case I mentioned earlier. Like, if they were 10 minutes, it's time to fill this out and move on. And so maybe balancing of things, but I'm wondering how are we working to, because I like all this, you know, but I feel like we have work to do in the de-escalation part of that, which is more consistent with the Guardian. And I'd be curious to know, like, do we have, I don't know, it's like some training, but like, what's our method or approach to like evolve that culture a little more towards that? Because there are pieces that I know we see and believe, but there's still pieces that we need to work on to be complete in that transition. Yeah.
Well, you know, Joe Montana is one of my favorite quarterbacks. If you look at his highlight films, there's no interceptions in there. You had all they have was the interceptions. I have a few of them from. And we have our officers make 300 contacts with people a day, either when the public calls us or we initiate it. And we arrest somewhere between 10 and 15,000 people a year. And the CRB, you don't see every interception, but you see so many interceptions. But that's really hard to see. And what we need to do is learn from those and enhance things. I think if there was more balance in what you saw, you might appreciate where we are today. And I've seen our department over a lot of years now, so I know we've come quite a ways. But that doesn't mean we should ignore cases that we see. And what you guys don't see is that occasionally, well, we have a technical IA meeting every afternoon. And we go through all the cases, whether they're internal affairs cases or service complaints. We go through every open case and we have a conversation about what's being done with it, the status of this. And that's where we would see a pattern of employee popping up, particularly with use of force. And so we will ask that an evaluation and assessment be done of their use of force. You know, individual cases you may not notice a pattern, but we can look at them all together. And that's where we might find that someone needs a little enhanced training to understand why it is that they're being so hasty in their use of force, or why it is that they're popping up so much in use of force. Sometimes it's things they can do differently, and we can talk more about the escalation of them. Sometimes they're working in a part of town where they're just going to use more force, or they're going to create some culture that's just going to happen. So those things do happen. I do think we can't emphasize de-escalation enough. And so Sergeant Williams, in fact, designed a draft de-escalation policy so that policies like TASER could reference use of force policy and de-escalation policy, which should be built out. Use of the police baton can reference to everything you take. And the reader there to make sure they know that that's being kept in. And you know, some departments have de-escalation training teams. We haven't done that. We've got detectives and others that have as part of their specialty encouraging teaching process. I think that CIT training is one of those. So yeah, you're seeing things that should suggest to us that we have more to do, for sure.
I think patients, you know, like an extra few seconds can buy so much more. To more of that, that's just prevention.
Yeah, and I also think that if you all could see the body work video that shows how it's successfully done in the norm, then it might be a little more restrictive.
Oh, I love that. the concept of the guardian versus the warrior. I think that implies that there's some knowledge, skills, and abilities that are greater than what you would require as a warrior. So my question is around what kind of training or additional resources are needed to continue this advancement into this destination, never moving away from it, keep getting better at it. What are some of the things that you think you need in terms of training or even equipment?
Yeah. Well, the way that we train now isn't the ideal. I mean, we've got about 4 different core training teams that are run on an ad hoc basis. So there's sergeants throughout the department that have one that's their responsibility, firearms training, one has tactics, one has emergency vehicle operations, and so on. And so it isn't. We don't have that centralized training, unity of message that we would have if we had a single training team that didn't specialize in one of those, but specialized in all of them. It would do 2 things for us. It would, instead of having officers constantly leaving their primary assignment to go prepare for training and go deliver training, they remain in their primary assignment, which is where we need them. And if we had a full-time training team of 5 or 6 officers and a sergeant, then that message that could, the things that you guys are asking for to be taught better than we do now, could be refined, delivered efficiently, effectively, consistently, the same from specialty to specialty. And I think that's, that would be in our community justice systems plan. The funding to create that, but without a full-time team, then all we can do is try harder until we have.
Neighboring jurisdictions, are they following this as well? Trying to become the guardian versus warrior.
I don't know.
And I'm not talking about Salem, Smithfield, that area. I was just thinking of training resources and sharing resources that we do.
Yeah, it's hit and miss around Oregon. Some departments have paid close attention to this stuff. Portland Police Bureau is big into the police executive research forum and all, looking for central policing stuff. But really, if you want to find a place that's really done an impeccable job of taking that plan and implementing it, you have to leave Oregon. Camden, New Jersey is probably the shining example of what this all looks like in practice. And they were able to do it there, took a ton of work. And what they did is they disbanded the Camden City Police Department. They created a new police department in the county. I don't know if it's Camden County, but in that county in New Jersey. And so they just started from scratch. They basically took that plan and everything, and all the academic lessons that have been taken for law enforcement in the last 20 years or so, and they created a new police department out of it, and it's pretty impressive. So that's really where a lot of people look to see how it can be done.
Sorry, Thomas. It's interesting, the de-escalation. I was trying to think of how that plays into the warrior guardian mentality. And I think, I'm sure Steve has a better perspective on this, as he's seen a lot more of the cases, but it strikes me as one of the things that I think we could do better on is sort of informing the parties at present about limitations. So, I have some confidence that we're hiring the right sort of people and training them. And so they're not going to just get into a beef because they're upset or they feel like they have to. I think one of the things we could work on next is ensuring that we're informing the parties around about why we can or can't. I'm sorry, I can't be your barricaded suspect. I can't leave you right now because I don't know if there's anybody else in there. We might be able to make this work out better as long as I was sure everybody was safe. That sort of thing. Yeah, I'm sorry that however they want to phrase it, but just communicating and say, hey, look, I'm here to protect people, and that's a difficulty for me because I don't know that you are not going to go shoot somebody. I see that you have a gun and you seem very upset. Is there some way we can make sure that I can leave and rest assured you're not going to shoot somebody? Yeah, the danger to others, and I'm just thinking of sort of the deadly force laws surrounding that as well. So, diffusing that situation once more. So, I sort of get the sense that I think we're all trying, the officers are really trying to implement that mentality, and communicating that mentality too. Say, hey, look, I'd love to leave. We can work this out some other time, but I got to be sure, that things are going to turn out okay for everybody. So that was just kind of the thought I had as I read this. It all looks great to me. Even the property damage. I can't leave because I'm afraid you can burn that building down. What can we do to help me do this? My camera, we're going to find you eventually, but I can't leave until I'm sure the building's not going to get burned.
And those are really the kinds of conversations that the negotiators have.
Yeah. We just move into the chief's report.
Oh, okay. Officer Hunt was recognized, along with a number of other officers from this part of the state, by Mothers Against Drug Abuse for his law enforcement. He's also done some, organized some enforcement efforts with local agencies where we work together to do some DUI enforcement. I've spoken at in-service the last couple months. We've had two owner and American subject summits to talk about our policy and what we're trying to move toward. Council has approved the supplemental budget for new radios. This is the portable radio and the base radio that's in our cars. It's a big expense, and so we've arranged to fund that and use the council's help, so that purchase is going to be. The new portable radio will be, and the mobiles will be able to communicate more directly with fire and Oregon State Police, which are on very high frequency. We have ultra high frequency radios. They're set up well for the next generation of radio frequencies that we'll use, and the portable radio has automatic location with fire information in it. So sergeant on scene would be able to pull up a map and see where all the officers are, so can the dispatcher. So that'll improve safety. Right? Yeah, I don't know what the technology is, but yes, that's UOPD hosted a meeting to sort of introduce the concept of having a regional civil disobedience response team. That would be a big commitment for everybody, so it was just the first conversation. And then Monroe Street Park neighbors have noticed this summer have experienced quite a bit more bad behavior in the park and people living in cars in the neighborhood. And so we had a meeting on a couple of Saturdays ago with them. And some news stories that you would have seen in the packet. We have canceled the captain's process. So after talking with the recruiter and after hearing some input from community and from within the department, the city manager recognized that it would be better for the next chief to be able to fill the vacancy that we have there now. So that process has been closed. Chief's recruitment process is marching along. There's a committee meeting this week and next week. And I think the rest of it about no new policy updates. This is the most recent data legislation report that we have. It's about several weeks old. Calls for service are all in the same area. Public initiated. Our proactive policing tends to be in that same area. glasses for this. We're public initiating calls for service are up 35%, and officer initiated are down 31%, so it's been a very consistent pattern. That's been going on for a couple of years, I think. These are the top 30 calls for service by nature. I just thought I'd share with you, only to show that we are doing some analysis to get a better understanding of what the activity is that's driving this increase in calls for service. If we know what's driving it, then we can adapt the department or have the resources that will get at it more ideally. So this is going to be pretty important information going into the community justice systems. These two lines, I don't know if I've shown you, you've seen this slide before. This line this is the blue and dark blue graph. This is the same as the previous graph. You basically have this many calls for service and this many officer-initiated calls. This is how many officers work every 24 hours. About 40 officers work on patrol teams, and about 10 officers work in special teams like airport, school resource, traffic enforcement units. And so we have 50 officers that work every 24-hour period. And when the calls for service go up, then it's still the same number of officers that handle all those calls to us. This is just further evidence that our capacity is limited. Workload goes up, there's something that has to not get done. We've got a few graphs that show calls for service by hour a day per on-duty officer. The ideal would be that this line is perfectly straight, but with overlapping shifts, it's very difficult to make that happen. We have periods where it's a little slower, very early morning, periods where it's a little busier for our staffing, first thing in the morning and in the afternoon. Part of that is addressed through the overlap.
It's really interesting. Year over year, that's pretty consistent.
Yeah.
It is. That can give you some good modeling for resources.
It is very predictable.
Yeah.
Yep. And then this is more evidence of the effect of the higher call load on our service. What you find is that our response time is fairly consistent. The change over time isn't enormous, but the queue time does change. It went up 45% in June, 29% in July. So what happens is a call comes in that's light blue. The call comes in and it sits in the queue for a certain amount of time while the dispatcher is waiting for officers to become available. That's where we've seen the greatest growth. So more calls, fewer officers are available at any given time. The response time, once we get the call, is the same. 9.7 minutes here, 10 minutes here, and then it varied a little bit in between, but the queue time is what's extending. So on priority 1 and 2 calls, that's how long somebody's waiting while they're being assaulted by their spouse or what have you. They're waiting a longer period of time. Priority 3 calls are crimes in progress. They're less serious. But because they're less serious, the queue time is even longer. See how the curve is there. And then the least serious calls that we have, priority 4s and 5s, they sit in the queue even longer. So we have some calls that wait a day or more than a day for a response. The stories of folks that have to wait in our lobby for hours because an officer isn't available. Coming in the lobby does not speed up our response time. It just means the person's waiting here instead of someplace else. So this is the effect on the public. They're waiting longer for us to arrive. Sometimes they don't wait. And then, let's see. This is the amount of time that we spend on a call, and you'll see that that time has grown over time. So The more care we provide on the individual calls to people who call us, whether that's someone in crisis or someone whose house has been broken into, fewer officers that are available. That drives how much time is spent. And then this map, or this chart, you've seen a number of times. It's very consistent. West University, Whitaker, and downtown have the highest number of crimes per capita. And, of those that have a great deal of calls for service, I should say. And the growth in those neighborhoods also tends to be the greatest. We've had, in the downtown, we've had 21% increase in calls for service over the last 3 months. West University, it's been a 23% increase, and Whitaker has been 35% increase in calls for service.
I feel like you're playing whack-a-mole.
Well, never so much before as we do now. For sure.
55%.
Yeah, you can see that the other officers
And if you're moving toward the door, and you might take an extra second.
less capacity.
Yeah, in 2007, when the Magellan report was done, the thinking at the time was that the officers should have so much unobligated time. And I don't know exactly how they were measuring it then, but I thought, well, they're unobligated. Why do you want them to have unobligated time? It's time when they're not on calls, not doing reports, not doing anything, but they're out in their car patrolling. They're not checked out with anybody, it's just free time, and they're doing nothing. I want to do something, you know, but it was like 30% of the time. We couldn't even get close.
When I did my ride-along, the officer mentioned that now he goes from call to call to call to call. He never has time to check on that house down the street that he thinks there's a little weird stuff going on and he wants to. So that would be that would be that time. It isn't exactly in his mind, it wasn't downtime, it was that he never got a chance to do any of his own, you know, because he's used to, you know, his area. And there's things that he would normally be able to check on and see about this place, where there's a lot of traffic and people coming and going, or whatever, you know, there's been complaints or something. But he never has time for that because he's just going from one house to the next to the next. Well, it seems that because he's by himself, and I imagine most of the officers ride singly, when something is happening, then they have to, somebody else comes in, and there can be several officers there at once. So then, you know, from my point of view, it's like, do we need all of these people here? I don't know. I don't see anything happening because I'm not hearing what's going on. But he felt like nonstop busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. What we want for, you know, in some beats, the officers will get to know certain neighborhoods pretty well. And if there is a problem house in the neighborhood, they want to be able to do the kind of work that will improve that situation for the neighborhood. Sometimes it's a low-end drug dealer, and they have frequent short-stay traffic, and the kind of people who are showing up are buying small amounts of drugs and stealing bicycles and what have you. So if an officer can address that in a good way, it just relieves all this tension from the street. So some officers have become pretty adept at dealing with those types of problems. And when they're this busy, those folks just suffer. Let's see. So, a few years ago, City Council passed the social host ordinance, and this is a lesson in the effect of public education. When they were discussing social host ordinance, it wasn't even passed yet, the number of loud disorderly parties dropped. So just all the publicity about the discussion that they're having, and when it passed, and then we had that effect for a year or so, but ever since then, the number of complaints have gone back up. But the number of parties that have been out of hand have gone down. So the ordinance has some effect. It hasn't changed the data for them in a way that we're hoping it would. Another example of that affects of public education is that in the November election when recreational marijuana passed, the election was in November. The law was implemented until the next July, but the number of DUIs for use of marijuana went up immediately.
That's really
Right after the election. So, to me, there's lessons there. How we can influence behavior. And then total crime, this is just August 1st, 14 through July 31st, 17. Persons crime is up 14.5%, property crime up 2.5%. Society crimes, which are the disorderly conduct, drinking in public, trespassing, complaints, is also covered. And that's pretty much it.
Questions? Okay. Move back and one of you just talk a little bit about the outreach.
Oh,
I'm going to have it, this is not another one, we have more, another agenda.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
I just want to get a time.
Yeah, let me give you 30 seconds. We met, we liked the word suggestion of a social media campaign so that anybody could, submit feedback or comments. We also thought that we should develop a list of organizations that we should be reaching out to. And so we planned the next meeting was that everybody would come with a list of ones they wanted to do. And then we were going to ask Carter, the chief, if there is already a plan for uniformed engagement, that we take a look at that plan and make sure some organizations may want a civilian police commission member and some, we want to do the right thing and complement those efforts. So that was kind of our thought, that we could be an in-person one. I think the idea was we'd figure out the message we wanted to convey and what we were and weren't going to say. We would send individuals out to these groups. And it would be mostly a listening thing, and then bring those concerns back here. And hopefully then get a little more diverse selection. So that was the that was the thought. We're going to meet again next week, maybe. I think the plan was to have everything done and implemented by March. We just thought the holidays were going to crunch too much, but I think we'd like to make some steady progress between now and the holidays, and then really start implementing after that. That was the thought.
That brings us to closing comments.
Oh, yeah.
Have you got anything to say?
The floor, if you'd like,
Oh, my goodness.
discussions and.
Well, I apologize for being late. I was at a work event, and I thought, I could show up a little bit late. I'll miss a little bit. I said to be here about a half hour earlier and couldn't get away. So, gosh, we are light attendance this evening. I noticed the parking lot was kind of sparse. I was like, what's going on? Well, darn. Well, no, I'd just say thank you for your great presentation before City Council the other day. So, City Council approved your work plan. I think you guys were already heading out the door when we did the vote, because you're like, we need to vote on this. But I think it's always great to have you come back before the council and for the council to remember why this commission exists, and to kind of, reaffirm the importance of this body and its role in being advisory to the chief and taking public input and all the things that we do here that sometimes feels like we're laboring in obscurity. You don't get the big splash like the Human Rights Commission might get or the Sustainability Commission gets to have. But the body of work that I think has been done in recent years really speaks, I think, to the work that you all put in around this table. So I just wanted to say thanks and point that out. Yeah.
So it was have because of obscurity.
Yeah, well, it can be valuable in some cases, that's true.
Any other comments? Okay, with that, we're adjourned.
Oh my goodness, that's too much. Never occurred to me that you would be adjourning at 6:30.
Well, we had a whole 60 minutes planned for the communication with the